Letter B is roll call on names recorded at the president.
Ross Blakely.
Present.
Robert Powell.
Here.
Don Tice.
Here.
Brent Kellogg.
Here.
Joe Coster.
Here.
Item C is the pledge of allegiance. Stand. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Section 2, presentations.
Okay, so we're working on developing out this, what we do this month at OTPS, or basically kind of all the stuff that's been going on. And it's a work in progress, so please be patient with us as we kind of move through this. Kendra did a great job of putting together kind of a little short presentation of some of the social media stuff we blasted out. And so our hope and goal is to be able to kind of do a quick kind of here's just a quick rundown of just some of the random goings on that's going on, and to be able to present that to you. So if we can get that up and running, we'll just, does that sound? Okay, so just some little pictures and videos of little pictures.
I was tossing public schools, those up there, so we can get them all.
We could just just taking that. Obviously, this happens.
You have to click on edit.
Yeah, click on edit.
Okay.
Oh, you're on sign in.
Like I said, it's a work in progress.
Will we get sound next time?
Maybe.
Yes.
Some
You can
music.
check out there. Good to present it if they're not top. Or
If you click to the bottom right, there's two arrows that separate you.
and just do autoplay, not show play. The idea for this month, because I know we talked about social media last month, was just to give you an idea of some of what we have put out on our social media this month. It would be way better with music, I agree.
It's kind of awkward when there's no sound.
You want to say? Do you need me to narrate?
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, obviously we're kind of up and running, going strong. Band, if you guys, I love listening to our band, I think they're amazing. They're really getting after it, so a lot of good stuff going on. Talked to Brady about some more operation stuff, and working on a lot of safety and security things, getting quotes on new mag locks for all of our new locks and keyless entry things for all of our doors, and GPS for our buses so we can track those. And he's kind of doing a lot of really good stuff, so that's the kind of quick rundown of this month. Like I said, be patient. I'm sorry? Or no. So just absolutely be patient with us as we kind of develop that out a little better as we move forward and kind of figure out a better way. And obviously, if there are things that you guys want to see or hear about that we can add in on that, just let me know. And I want to make sure you guys have a feel and a sense of what's happening around campus on a day-to-day basis. That's all I got.
Okay. Item B, recognize and hear from visitors. Item C is our financial report.
So, a couple things. I went back and looked just to kind of get an idea from when we switched to our money market account, and then also to a LAP where we have money invested through the liquid asset pool. Last year, we took in $100,000 in interest that was going to building fund that does help fund some of the HVAC stuff and pool items that we've kind of had go awry lately. So far, year to date, so really just 2 months, we've taken in $30,000 just in interest off those accounts. And to give you a better idea, school year 21-22, we only took in $3,000 total in interest, just having a regular interest-bearing checking account. We did get our first state aid payment this last month. It is up about $130,000 over last year. And just to give you an idea, this time last year, our fund balances were sitting at just over $5 million. Right now, we're at about $3.8 million. The difference is that last year is when we had sold all those bonds off, and so that extra money was sitting there. We just had a bond payment that came due. But overall, things are looking really good. Jeff told me I've been kind of going through the budget. We've, taken some hits here and there with inflation, but we feel really good about all of that. Questions?
Right, item D, Assistant Superintendent report.
So federal programs, we can start there. Bree and I just nearly have the consolidated application finished. It's 90% finished, which that's been a learning process for me. Obviously, learning everything that goes into that. I'm so thankful for Bree. I'm so thankful for Wayne, who we work with, Dean, who we work with, who's been very patient, helping me understand exactly all those, because there's a lot at the very beginning that's due. So we have that almost done. We did have our annual yearly title meeting, which was an awesome meeting. We had representatives from both elementary schools and parent representatives, so that was good. We got a lot of those things kind of marked off. So that's going good. Teaching and learning is going to kind of go into the next part that the three of us are going to be talking about. So I'm going to start with my part, which is going to be brief, but I put in front of your seat just some notes about where we ended last year as far as testing data goes. And I'm not going to go over each chart because you can look at that, but there were a few things that I wanted to point out that will lead into what these ladies are going to talk about, which is kind of our biggest maybe action step for this year, the biggest thing that we want to take on to try to address some of what we noticed through this data. So when you look through it, I think you'll come to the same conclusions that we have come to. First of all, this is from the end of last year. So we have already done some beginning of the year assessments, especially at both elementary schools and at the middle school as far as beginning of the year benchmarks. That's not super reliable data for driving big picture decisions, because obviously they've been home all summer, right? So then they come back and you're dealing with that summer slump a little bit and trying to get caught up. So what I think you will notice as we look through this briefly is, first of all, I want to start the conversation by saying we're really trying to be intentional about this. Data is just information, right? It's just information for us to have. And all the data that is representative of our district is a shared responsibility. So when we look at 3rd grade reading or 8th grade science or ACT, that's not representative, good, bad, beautiful, ugly, of any one person or one building. That represents our system as a whole. That's what we want to improve. We want our kids from pre-K to 12th grade to get the very best, and for that to be a systematic approach to their learning. There's no holes, there's no gaps, there's no repetition. It's just a good system. So one thing we noticed right off the bat, which we brought this up in one of these meetings before, is we don't have a consistent data source that we use from pre-K through 12th grade. I would guess probably no schools have a consistent data source that they use from pre-K to 12th grade, because it would be very hard to find one assessment that would be as appropriate for 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds as it is for young adults who need to leave us and go out into the world. The biggest thing that jumps out at us is that the one and only transition, we don't have anything consistent, is that middle school to high school transition. We do have a consistent assessment between upper and lower. We do have one that's not great, but we have it between upper and middle. But when they leave 8th grade and they go to high school, there's nothing to try to track progress of those kids. So that's something you're going to see as we go through. And then the last thing that I hope that you will notice, and I think you will, is that our data is not bad. It's not bad by any means. Our teachers do a fantastic job. Our kids are learning. The biggest concern for us is that we're not seeing overall growth. When you look from year to year, although our kids do pretty well, we're not seeing their overall achievement improve from year to year, which would be our hope. We want them to do better this year than we did the year before, and every year as they go forward. So those are the big takeaways. If you look at the first couple of pages in here, those are NWEA assessment data from the end of last year. Our two buildings that use NWEA, we've talked about this before, the upper and the lower. They use it for a variety of reasons, the main one being the fact that it's an approved assessment for the RSA. You have to pick from a list of 7 or 8 assessments. This is the one that we use. And it gives you a lot of data, but we focus on it primarily for the growth aspect. So what you'll see if you look at these two charts for both upper and lower is the percentage of our students who achieved their growth goal in that year. So you can see each year how kids were doing, but you can also see how one group of kids did from year to year. For instance, if you look here, these blue kids, that's the same group. That's one group as they have progressed through the year. So the kids that are the same color, that's the same group of kids. Now, NWEA will tell you that districts should be pleased with their overall results if they have approximately 60% of their kids meeting their growth goal. It's a very strenuous test. It's an adaptive test. So as kids do better, regardless of how old the child is, as they answer more questions correctly, it gives them harder and harder and harder questions to answer. So the NWEA measure for success, I would say, when it comes to growth of kids is 60%. You can see that we're very, very close to that in most of our areas. And another thing that these scores do not account for, and there's not a way to account for it in the system, is students who take their beginning of the year benchmark. They take it in August, right? And it sets a goal for them of 9 points. We want them to grow 9 points before May. A lot of our students, and I didn't get into, there's no way to pull that from the system, you just have to look. But I would guess each grade level, 20 to 25 students, if they really excel in December or January when they take the second one and they meet that goal of 9 points, it gives them another 5 or 6 points to grow, which is great, right? Because we want them to continue learning. The problem is, if they don't meet that additional 5 or 6 points, it reports them as not having met their growth goal, which we don't feel like that's accurate. We feel like at the beginning of the year, it has said for most students that year's worth of growth is going to land between 8 and 11 points, mostly. We have a lot of kids. I would say around a quarter of each grade that meets that goal in December or January. So their goal is extended. If they don't meet that second goal, they're going to show up on this report as not having met their growth goal. So these scores don't look terrible, and they really don't look terrible when you take into consideration that there's another 25% of kids that should be added to this report. So you can kind of look at that for those two sites. The next 2 pages have to do with state testing. State testing, which is tricky. The state does not determine what score a student has to get to be considered below basic, basic, proficient, or advanced until they've scored all the tests. So students take the test, the scores go to the state, they see how everybody did, and then they decide what's passing and what's not. That's hard because each year you do not know as a teacher what target you're aiming for. You have no idea. And I have seen, as an example, about 4 years ago, the 8th grade science test, in 1 year, a proficient score was 35%, and the next year it was 72%. So when you're looking at the data that the state is sending you, it's really hard to know how to gauge whether or not you've been successful because you don't know what the target is that you're aiming for. And what I can tell you, and you can look at that for, I put for the upper and the middle school, is we do consistently score one of the highest scores in Rogers County. We may not always be the highest, but we are one of the highest year after year. Now that data for this year hasn't come out, so I'm not sure for this year, but year after year we are consistently scoring one of the highest in Rogers County, which is great. Again, if you look at this assessment, just like in WEA though, I think what you'll notice is while our scores are maybe not as good as we want them to be, they're okay, they're just not growing. We're seeing the same group of kids with 30% below basic, 27% below basic, 22%. The score is just staying the same. It's not having any meaningful progress. That's a concern. The other concern that we had is when you look at our number of students scoring advanced, it's too low. We have students that many more students than 2 per grade level that should be scoring in the advanced column on this test. Again, we don't know what advanced means because they don't tell you what kind of score they have to get into that category, but that's what it is. So you can look at state testing for middle school and the upper. And then probably the most recognizable, the most meaningful assessment that people understand is the ACT, which that's what our high school students take. And so you can see where we're scoring in that top line. We are beating the state average in every area. We beat the state average, which is wonderful. Except that if we look at what ACT is recommending for college and career readiness, which means they could step into a career and be successful, they could go to college without having to take zero-level courses. In every area except English, we're considerably lower than we would need to be. So that's a concern. The other concern with ACT, because they never see it until all of a sudden they either decide to take it as a sophomore or we force them to take it as a junior, we have no way of gauging how our students are going to do on that assessment. If they're prepared for it, I'm a parent of a sophomore right now, and I don't know. If you were to ask me how's he going to do on that assessment, I have no idea. I have no clue. He might get a 30 or he might get a 12. I don't know how he'll do. And that's a problem because we can't plan for that, which means we can't get our students prepared. So all of this to say, as we started looking at our end of the year data, the three of us kind of sat together and came up with some goal areas that we wanted to address along with the principals based on this data. And we are asking for approval for a purchase order to go toward a step of adding the pre-ACT in 9th grade and the pre-ACT 8-9 in 8th grade. To try to give our students an idea of where they might score on those assessments and their families an idea of where they may score on those assessments. And also knowing that the pre-ACT also has the interest inventories that students fill out. It used to be the Explore test if you had kids that were doing this forever ago, and they would do an interest inventory, what's of interest to them. That might help us capture some of those students who should be scoring in that advanced upper level, but for whatever reason, we're not getting them there. Sometimes that has to do with a little bit of burnout. Sometimes it has to do with a little bit of I'm bored at school, right? If we can get that data on what's of interest to them, we can partner with our counselor to write an IDEAP for them that is engaging and meaningful. So that's what these two are going to be talking about.
So Miss Oologah-Talala is gonna focus on the pre-ACT part of it. I wanted to share with you our focus areas based on this data and based on our literacy plan. So I have it listed, so if you're visual like me, you can have it in front of you. So I got with our principals, we approved our literacy plan over the summer, and there is a lot in that plan. There's a lot from each site to do, to work on. And so I asked our principals to get with their committees, knowing that literacy is the foundation of all things. So to improve anything, really we need to improve in that area. They looked at their plans and decided they picked some things from each area that they were going to focus on and make sure that they got done this year. And so in the upper and the lower, I think as you read through here, what you'll see is that the focus in all buildings is very similar. We're focusing in the elementaries. Their focus is going to be really in the lower is tier 1 instruction. So that means the instruction that everyone is getting, we're going to make sure it's consistent, explicit, foundational skills for reading, and that's with really great reading that we purchased and are implementing. And Ms. Bell is working really hard with her teachers, and I'm excited to see it as I walk through them implement that program. And so our tier 1 instruction covers, that's about 80% of your students should be grasping those concepts with your tier 1 instruction. And so we know that to lift everyone, that's where our focus is going to be, to make sure that's the best instruction we can give them. They're really focused on literacy as far as making it systematic, making sure that they are talking about literacy data at their PLCs so that it's informing their instruction as they go through the year. The upper elementary is going to provide is focusing on that RTI, so that tier 2, tier 3 groups of students who are struggling readers and maybe struggling with what that tier 1 instruction. They're going to be using small groups and RTI with really great reading to target those skills. Not just foundational skills, because we do have some students at the upper that are still struggling with those skills, but also content skills as far as comprehension, critical reading processes, those skills which all come into play in their testing.
And then both of them are going to be working on writing. And we're focusing on their standards and coming up with grade level rubrics. And so we know that research shows that writing goes in with reading. They use the same brain processes. Writing shows comprehension and increases comprehension. And so really to improve reading, putting writing with it is a great approach. And so I'm excited about that. Middle school and high school, they are both focusing on vocabulary is a big piece that they're working on, which academic vocabulary, especially in middle school, and that's that vocabulary they're going to see on assessments. Vocabulary that they're not using in everyday language, but it's more things like analyze this. What does analyze mean? And really focusing on those words so that they know when they come across them on assessments and things like that, they can understand what the questions are asking them to do and really do their best there. So they're focusing on that. They're also focusing on writing. I'm excited about this. The high school ELA team has already done grade level rubrics. They've already done that work, and so our middle school is going to be talking about that. They're also going to be looking at cross-curricular writing, so collaborating with the social studies team and doing writing together. The high school is going to come up, I'm excited about this, they're going to come up with a style guide to help their other subject teachers grade writing in their classroom to know what to be looking for and help them respond to writing better. And so I'm excited as we go through the year for the high school and middle school to collaborate on that, and so that it's really consistent, have consistent practices. And then as far as assessments and PD go, we're doing, at the elementary, we have really got on the same page for NWEA. We sat and we talked and we came up with some consistent practices on how we're going to be giving NWEA, and then in September we have some professional development plan for our teachers so that they can understand the data that they're looking at, so that it can better inform their instruction and help them to know how to talk to parents with this data, and how to help it just drive their instruction a little better. And then in the secondary level, like Ms. Agnes talked about, we talked about how we don't have a consistent assessment piece between middle and high school, and so that's where the pre-ACT 8-9 and pre-ACT is going to come into play. I'll let Ms. Deb talk about that because she's the expert there. But we are going to do some writing professional development too for our teachers. So they're going to be getting some with Oklahoma Writing Project. They're coming in September, and so our high school teachers are going to be able to get some really good instructional strategies for writing, and so that's just going to help them in those focus areas a little bit more. So those are our like firm steps that we're taking. As we go through the year, I'll be checking in with the literacy committees, and we'll be talking with teachers to see how things are going, and just move through the year and make sure we're making progress in those literacy areas. So, I definitely.
ACT, nobody's heard of that, right? It's new. ACT. Okay, so I have a hand up for you, but I'll get to this in a minute. So, like Mrs. Atkins said, this started earlier this year. What are we using? How are we using it? Why are we using it? So, several years ago, we used the NWEA assessment at the high school, but the problem with NWEA is that it really tops out. So while we were using it, it didn't really give us valuable feedback for those high school kids, especially now because the state has adopted the ACT as the required test. So you have to take it to graduate. So we looked at progress learning, which is what we currently use for benchmark testing, but the issue with progress learning is that it's subjective in the sense that the teachers can write a lot of those assessments. So if one teacher wants to focus more on vocabulary and another teacher wants to focus more on strategies, the data is there and the data is good, but it doesn't really grow. So we really started the conversation. We kind of flipped the script a little bit and said, well, where are they going to end up? And then what steps are we doing to get them there? So we know we end 11th grade with the ACT because they have to have it to graduate. It's a state requirement. So what are we doing to help grow to that point? So up until now, we haven't really done anything. The number one hardest thing for the kids with the ACT is that it's a timed test. And we don't really do that. So we start talking about the ACT, right? And I make the joke, like, who's heard of that? Well, the ACT is recognizable. So if we can implement that in lower grades, we're going to get that student buy-in in a way that we aren't with NWEA and we aren't with progress learning, because nobody knows
what that is. So if we can add that ACT element, we get kids on board. Oh, I know I have to have it. ACT has really, and we have a training in October for this. ACT has really worked hard in the last couple of years to add a social emotional piece. It's kind of built into their tests and into a lot of their prompts that they have, but they also have done a lot of career readiness. So that's why they now call it the college and career readiness assessment. So when the kids get the document back, we get 3 copies. We get a copy to put in their file. We get, which is part of what's on your handout there. The kids get a copy. We get a copy to send home to parents, and then we also get a copy to put in their file. What they get back is a 4-page document. And so it shows them specifically what questions did you miss, what was the answer supposed to be. We get to keep ththose tests. This is on the pre-ACT 8-9 and the pre-ACT. It will show them an interest inventory. So if you go through and you fill out all these questions, hey, we think you might really like these things. You should look into this. And so I've talked with some of the elective teachers, and there are other schools that are using this data to recruit kids for electives. And so it's got the interest inventory, it's got career cluster recommendations, so that's something you can easily add into any class. Hey, this says that based on this and based on what you put, have you thought about this career? Look at this umbrella, here's all the things that fall into that category, which we know we hear a lot about. Well, you didn't prepare me for what I could have done. Well, this does. This gives you 4 pages that's easily digestible. There's tons of free training. So one of the things, we're probably talking about the training, one of the things, because not everybody wants to go to college, right? So that career cluster gives them more information, but the Oklahoma State Regents for higher education, they pay for 10th graders to take the pre-ACT. So we already are offering that. Because the 11th grade state requirement is the ACT. The state pays for the ACT. So we're only looking at having to pay for the pre-ACT for 9th grade and the pre-ACT 8-9 for 8th grade. So it kind of levels them up. So we get this really consistent data that we can do something with, and we can make informed decisions, and everyone in every grade level and every elective teacher can say, hey, these are areas that we scored low on, where can we incorporate this in? So really out of 4 grades taking it, we only have to cover the cost of 2. So I think that's huge. But also, since the state regents pay for the 10th grade test, they have a grade training that they will come out and give to staff. They will come out and give to students, where they actually teach them how to look at their report and what that means to you. They will come out and talk to parents. So if we want to we talked about doing a training night. Once our scores come back in, hey, parents, here's what your kids got. Regents, again, this is something recognizable. Come in, talk to them. We compare that up with FAFSA, because we know there's always FAFSA questions. A lot of kids don't really think about that, and the FAFSA is changing this year in a lot of different ways. So yeah, you know. So it's a good way to start that conversation. You couple all that all together. But also, because it's the ACT, we can start to have those conversations about, hey, if you're interested in concurrent, I know you're in 8th grade, but if you think this is a path that you want to go, let's look at your score now. Let's see what changes we need to make now so that we can get you on that road, and we can get, because we know the state covers right now a good chunk for our kids to take concurrent classes. So this is a great way to start to build that conversation, to start to have that in. So right now, when you crunch the numbers, it's a little bit less than about $5,000 to cover the pre-ACT 8-9 for 8th grade and the pre-ACT for 9th grade, because the regents cover pre-ACT for 10 and they cover ACT for 11. So we're only picking up the bill for 2 of those.
Is it 5,000 each or 5,000
total? And so really the way it works is we order the tests, then we get a discount. We get $1 off for every test that we get because we have a state contract. So we order the tests, we administer the tests, and then we send all the materials back. It is a paper test. We are billed based on the actual number of tests that we give. So even if we say, hey, it's $70 per kid, right now our enrollment looks like this, we're anticipating this number, depending on how things work out, it may be a little less than that. If enrollment changes, it may be a little bit more than that. But it's roughly $17 per kiddo, and we're just billed. It's not like College Board, where if you order 10% more, they bill you for the rest. ACT only bills you for what you actually use. This is also really good because I mentioned this sets them up for the future because they aren't used to taking 10 assessments. We know we have really good assessments in all of our other sites, and our kids are performing, but when you put a timer on it, we've all been there, you just immediately shut down. So if we can practice this in 8th grade, we practice this in 9th grade, we start to build in those skills, they take it 10th grade, and then they take it 11th grade, by now they've pretty much picked a path. It's going to be familiar to them. Kiddos that maybe weren't thinking about going the college route have all of a sudden gotten a high enough score that they can get a scholarship, even if it's to, if it's to TCC, if it's to, there's one of the tech schools around will do a big scholarship too. They want kids that are willing to work, that are willing to show that they're willing to put the time in. I've talked a lot recently with Dr. Murray. He's the rep for Oklahoma for the ACT. And we've kind of been brainstorming with him some training that we can do for the staff. So it's great that we give this to parents. It's great that we talk to kids about this, but we've got to have staff buy-in. So he will show us how to use the portal because we do get, and you'll see it on the paper too, we get physical copies of the reports, but the ACT portal for what we can do with data is almost endless. Like Mrs. Adkins asked me, what can you get with it? Anything, any way that you can think of, you can break this data down. And I've talked to the math department in the high school. Last year, they started looking at just their math scores. It will break it down by subsection. It will tell you how many questions of that specific STEM are on the test. So as a teacher, you know, hey, like I thought this was really important because this skill transfers to this. But really, when we look at this, maybe it's not as important as we thought it was, so maybe we should scale back and reconfigure. And the test is pretty much the same every year. It's not really going to change. So we're working on training for staff with the Oklahoma rep for ACT. ACT has tons of training that they'll provide to us. Their customer support is really, really, really great. The regents are willing to come out and do a training for students, for parents. They can come into our concurrent and our FAFSA night. They always talk a lot about trying to do FAFSA. And then, like I said, with our PLC groups, this is just going to give, by adding this to 8th grade and 9th grade, it's going to give us a piece that is really going to help us make education decisions with data that's steadfast, it's recognizable, easy buy-in for parents. Everybody that has been in education knows.
All right, so on this page, and you guys may not know this, he recommended. I'm assuming schools that do what we're talking about doing probably see those numbers go up. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but let me back up. If we talk to schools that do this,
Yes.
if we talk to schools that do the 8, 9, and if they see those numbers
Yes.
go up.
So the test, the training, it's not testing, the training that we're going to go to in October was actually recommended to us by Dr. Murray. Again, he's the rep for ACT for Oklahoma, Texas. And he said specifically, this is a really good time for us to show you what we can do, and then also for you to network with other schools that do that. Because what ACT is able to do with college and career readiness, the tracking that they're able to do, it's mind-blowing. I mean, and they even have on this one, it shows you, it's really hard to see, but it's got a blue line and then it's got lighter around it. ACT has predictions. Their predictions are almost spot on. I've been looking at them for 9 years now, and it's rare that it happens, but kiddos are pretty much going to fall in the range. They've perfected this by this point. Their stuff is good stuff.
Dr. I would suggest whoever you can sucker in or recruit to go to that training in October. I mean, I know we probably have, the more people we can have trained into this, I feel like these are incredible.
Well, they're going to come to us.
Well, they come to us.
Yes, so we're babysitting this because we thought that's like too much all at once. So we have this training set in October. I think there's 2 in October because the state regents and ACT travel all around in September. Actually, it's next week. And we're going to that one next week too. So they do a presentation about all the testing and all the laws that have changed. So we'll see them there. And then he recommended this training in October. It's kind of a more in-depth. And then we've been talking with him about meeting with him one-to-one, face-to-face, about what this would look like for us. And then once we have our data back in January, because we figure if we do it now, like we're just using made-up numbers, it's not really useful. So we're thinking, our projection is if we give all of these tests, the whole kit and caboodle, 8, 9, pre-CT 9, pre-CT 10, in October, November, we'll have that data back by January. So in January, then what we're kind of playing around with, and he's working on if he can make this into a full day, is we do a how do you read the report? What's on the report? What's it look like? How does that affect class instruction? But then also, hey, here's your login to this portal. Here's where you can get more in depth in reports, and we'll tailor that. So if you just want nitty gritty, how do I log in? How do I find my kids? How do I find the subsections? Or if you want to manipulate that, and you can go back and you can say, hey, so I know that we looked at this subsection. What are the question stems that show up in this subsection? What students are lower in this area? Is it, and I talked to Mrs. Noble about this, it will even go back and it will show you the number of kids who answered a specific question stem, like a percentage. So if 20% answered B and 40% answered C, but B was the right answer, why did only 20% of our kids get B right? Why did 40% of our kids guess C? What is it in that question? Okay, and then you can even dive deeper. And this is kind of where I nerd out on all the data stuff, right? So like maybe it's question 33. Like maybe they need a break and it's question 33. So by that point they're just bubbling in. And then I even like to walk around, and if a kid, they just get tired, they get to the end and they just start scratching in answers, did they run out of time, right? Because we know they don't take a lot of time tests. So, hey, was this kid on my list that they did really good in the beginning, they ran out of time, they just bubbled in? Okay, great, I see that they just bubbled in at the end. Well, how did they do on the front part of their test? Were they doing really well until this point? Because then I know that they know the information. What we have to focus on is the timing, and that's easy. You just do a bell ringer, set a timer, and you just build that into your curriculum. But if it's truly, we don't touch this question, we thought somebody else covered this, or it could even be this isn't covered until later, because the pre-ACT is meant to be taken in 10th grade. So if you're taking it as a freshman, you may score a little bit lower, but are you scoring lower because that's a skill you may not cover until next year, or are you scoring lower because it's down here? But that's the kind of stuff that we can go in and look at, because we know, unlike some of the other things, it's not subjectively made. It's not teachers that are looking at a bank and just pulling stuff in, but also because we have ACT support. And they'll say, hey, well, we can come and do a training on that. And because it's ACT, they offer full wraparound. So I was talking with Dr. Murray, and I said, hey, we're thinking about this. What do you think? And he's like, yeah, I think that'd be great. I could probably make a whole day out of it. Let me crunch some numbers and let you know. So they offer the full wraparound build.
I think training's paramount, because it sounds like as big as a Cadillac, and I don't want to just put the key in it and start it and drive it. So anyway, I appreciate the very interesting podcast on time tests in America. If you know who Malcolm Gladwell is, Outliers. Yeah, he talked about kids who performed best in law school did worst on the tests just because of their brain.
Yes.
Brainstorm. Do you have any questions for? I mean, I don't mean to cut you short.
I do. I got one question. On the, now, you're saying we're going to get all this data and everything like that. Is all the teachers going to dive in this? I mean, I don't want to say this to make people mad, but I mean, teachers have enough on their plate now. They got everything going on. They got to do these grades, they got to do this everything. How many teachers are really going to dive into this and really study this for each kid? I mean, honestly. I mean, don't get me wrong.
No,
It's a
I'm
great
like,
thing.
because I've actually asked some people, I'm like, hey, listen, this is what I'm thinking. I've workshopped this idea around, and I've said, hey, what about this? And I kind of work backwards. I always think about the one person in the room that's like, I'm not doing this, I'm not here, I'm going to make my grocery list while you're talking. I think if we tier it, and that's what I talked with Dr. Murray about, like, hey, we don't want everyone to go all in. So we want to tier, hey, here's your kids, here's your login, here's how you can see where they're struggling, because we already have the PLCs built into our remote days anyway. So within PLCs, these conversations are already happening, but now they're going to happen with data that's meaningful, that we should be looking at, that are actually going to affect instruction. If you want to know more, this is where Dr. Murray comes in. Hey, here's how you log in, here's how you get your data, go forth in your PLC, do you, make good choices, instruct your kids. If you want to go more, we have a training, we do a little dance break, snack break, bathroom break. Hey, if you want part 2, if you want to know how to manipulate these different things that are available, come back, we'll show you more. If you have enough now to look at, and you're feeling good, you feel like this can affect what you're doing in the classroom for positive change, and we can see results because it's going to be measurable. If they're taking it every single year, 8, 9, 10, 11, we're going to know if it's measured, if anything's changing. So by tiering it and by adding it into what we're already doing, everybody should be able to do something with it.
I think if they understand the value, this is for some will, some won't.
Well,
That's right.
I just think some
Well, even
kids.
our elected teachers, I asked her, so I went to Mr. Matthews and Mrs. Denslow, and I said, well, what are you going to do with this? And Mrs. Denslow said at the school that her husband is at, they use it to recruit kids for speech and debate and drama, and she's like, this would be great, because then I can go to 8th grade enrollment, and I can say, hey, so I see all you guys put this on your interest inventory, did you know that we have this elective? And Mr. Matthews said the same thing. He's like, even if you are looking at a specific career path, your brain is going to work the way that it needs to when you play an instrument. So, hey, like this is something that you can put on a resume. This is something that you can look at later for college. So even teachers that this otherwise may not affect, because I specifically asked them, hey, like if we're doing this, like what are you going to do in your PLC? You're just going to hang out. They said that that's what they would look at. And it's a 4-page document. They can do so much with their career in college.
Well, I wasn't trying to, I'm not really going to do
No, that's why I asked those
So
people.
2 things. Number 1, I think we need to do this and do it consistently. I think 5 years from now, if we're still running this play, I think we'll see the great benefits of it. Here's what I feel like we've done is we've done this and we've done that. And we've done, we're
Yes.
Google Classroom trained, we're Spark Classroom trained, we're this classroom trained.
Oh, yeah, I got every badge.
We've got all of them. And my desire, and I'm just one, but I want us to pick a path and stay that path. And the longer that you do this, the more teachers do it, they realize the resource it is. I mean, we could be kicking or taking names in 4 or 5 years if we do this.
That's one reason that we did land on all the options we talked about. We landed on ACT because I think it has some instant buy-in from the very get-go. People understand it, right? So
I didn't understand half the thing you gave me on the back page. I go, wow, I know. Every Oklahoma American understands ACT.
And I know your daughter's on the list. I have 90 kids right now signed up for the ACT that's next month. Like, they take it very seriously. They come in, hey, you have anything I can study? Hey, you... So I think we get that NWA didn't provide, and that we are doing progress running. That buy-in isn't there. It's just not.
Joe, to address your question from an administrative standpoint, we will help teachers with that at the beginning, just like every other assessment we give when we first gotten that.
Right.
And there's 50 reports. We have gone in and said, let's look at these 2. Let's pull these 2. I mean, and I'm sure, I haven't seen all the ACT reporting, but from what Layla says, it sounds like it's pretty extensive. So that'll be our job, is to go in and figure out which of these reports are the most valuable and how can we give it to teachers in a way that doesn't completely overwhelm them. Their response to this is just as crucial to success as a parent's response, a child's response. So that will be our challenge, is to figure out how can we support them through that from the very get-go. And it will have to be baby stepped in a little bit. Like, we're going to look at one thing to start. And then by this time next year, we'll look at that one thing, plus let's add this thing too, So that will be our job. Is
So
to make
you
sure
all
they
going
know.
to be like trained facilitators? Is that you 3? Are your principals involved in that? Because I think if it falls on one person, it's overwhelming.
So Layla is very knowledgeable already. We are going to get trained, the 2 of us. Mr. Hogue is pretty knowledgeable about ACT, Ms. Dixon as well, from the days when we used to call it Explore. Now it's pre-ACT. She was an administrator during that time too. So I'm sure she'll be like us and have to get caught up to speed. But we want every administrator and leader that's touching that to be as trained as they can, so that we can be support.
I agree.
one last question.
But he was really first, so sorry. You couldn't talk. Poor Don. Thank you.
The question here is we all know that these federal programs and things are always subject to change year to year and things like that. What provision do we have in place to assure that even as personnel might change within our district and so forth, the oversight that we've got some, not just like you were talking about individual, but as a collaborative group or whatever it's doing it so that we can make those adjustments from year to year as changes occur and so forth going forward, so that it's not, you know, someone's responsibility that next year they're not here and no one takes it out of time. So
I think that goes back to what Brent was just saying, and it's going to take some time to consistently do this year after year. I agree 1,000%. I feel like for a little bit, it's gotten better over the past couple of years, but it was a new initiative every year. And that puts a bad taste in teachers' mouths too, honestly, because it's like, we're not going to do this next year. So do I invest a lot of time in this right now? Do I not?
Thank you.
I think that it's just going to be us being strategic. How do we introduce this? How do we support teachers through it? How do we make it mean something to everybody? And which is what I love about ACT. It means something to kids. It means something to parents. It means something to teachers. It means something to our districts. I think that alone is just going to take some time to show we believe enough in this that we will be doing this. Just like in WEA, it's just the way we do business at elementary now. We don't question it. It's on the calendar every year. It's valuable to us. I feel like this is going to be the same thing. And I feel like it already starts up a leg up because of what it is.
and someone will have the responsibility to review the information that's coming forward, because we all know there will be changes annually on some of these different things. So
I'll piggyback 1,000% what he's saying is you can bring in a new administrator, a new tester, and hey, we use this one as a great tool. I want us as a district to land all in. Devo, I can hear your passion. I appreciate it. I mean, you sold me. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, holy cow, this is amazing.
Well, like I said, I workshopped the idea around. I tried to talk to a teacher in every single department, and I said, hey, nothing is finalized yet, but if we go this direction, what are your thoughts on that? And I think because we have more teachers that have been in our district for an extended period of time and that have been in education for an extended period of time, they recognize that. And every single person that I said was like, well, yeah, I already know that anyway. I'm already familiar. Our kids are already doing it in 10th grade. They have been for years. The ACT's been the state assessment for the last 6 years. Like, we already have this. It would be great if this was what we were basing our decisions on, because we've had it for 6 years and because the pre-ACT and 11th grade have been paid for already for all these years. Like, if we really want to go in, we could go back 6 years and look at it. I don't recommend that for everybody.
No, I just want the district, this is it. Right, this is what we do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and you obviously would have brought this to the table if you didn't buy into that. But the thing about teacher frustration is we did this, and then we did this, and then we did this, and
Yes.
like, I want them to hear from us.
Yeah, I have more of a comment than a question, but I mean, I agree with pretty much what everybody said. Hitting it and just sticking with it, kind of thing, like what you were saying. But from a student's perspective, that I wasn't directly touched on, but obviously it's part of the process. Obviously, what you were mentioning, looking at the data and being able to find areas for improvement, areas of interest, absolutely phenomenal. The other side that I really buy into, the 8th and 9th grade, is fantastic, because it's, by the time, most of the time, the way that it's been set up, it's like these kids are, I mean, everybody knows what the ACT is. It's to that next level, whatever it is, to get into college. It's like, well, and if there's so much pressure on it, I guess is what I'm trying to say, that by the time they take it in 10th or 11th grade, they're already stressed out. It's a time test. It's, for some kids, it's almost like set up to fail. Not necessarily, but I mean, I say that from experience. I've got 4 kids. Most of you know that. And I always say I've got 4 kids. I've got one of each. They're obviously very similar, but they're all vastly different test takers. Vastly. And one of mine, I mean, give him a test and oh my goodness, happier than anything. But the rest of them, not so much. One in particular. And that puts an extra stress on them, because it's like by the time they take that test, so much is riding on it. and now I'm time. And now it's just the test anxiety, and they don't test well anyway. And having these, taking it in 8th grade, there's not any pressure. It's not like, oh man, like a college career, resting on this 8th grade test. It's not. And then to have that, and then they kind of get used to it. And then, obviously we always kind of push, the more you take, the more you get more of these, but then there's only so many you can get in by, junior, senior year. And I will say, and would it change? I don't know, because like I said, I do have one, that has some test anxiety. And of course, all my kids, you probably can guess. I won't say anybody's name. I wouldn't do that to him. But I will say, the one that scored the lowest is the one that is currently the only one of my kids right now that is on honors scholarship in college. But would that have changed, if they had taken it earlier, 8th, 9th? Quite possibly, because they may not have been quite as stressed. So I see, long-winded way of saying I see the advantage of starting 8th, 9th, take the pressure off, teach them how to, like you said, teach them how to test under time, because that's not necessarily, like you said, not necessarily that's, the be-all, end-all. That's not just going to define your career, but it'll at least kind of guide them into that, the state standard anyway, to at least give them a fighting chance as far as what the state is requiring.
Don't ask my question.
Long-winded, sorry.
Thank you. I got one. I'd like to get back to, I'd like to get back to Brent's question. I think the ACT is the standard. It has been for years. But I might have missed this in Brent's question. I really don't care what the ACT rep has told you. He's selling product. I really don't care. His question was, did you talk to other schools that have done it, and what's their thoughts on it, and how many of them? I don't think I ever. Have we visited with other schools that has went through this program?
Yes, I talked to Kachusa, does a lot with it. And then really at our training, so we haven't had the one for this year. So I couldn't tell you exactly the school this year because that training is next week. But I know from the one last year, where was it? But they're adding it. So to answer your question, yes, because it usually comes up at our trainings that we have every year with the regents and with ACT. And we all sit together in different schools to talk about the ways that they use it and what their data is looking like and how they're adding it at different levels. They don't always say what school they're from specifically, but I do know for a fact there are multiple around the state. So the one that I'll go to next, well, that they'll join me at next week is in Broken Arrow. So it's generally this region. And so they always offer like a question and answer. Hey, like what have you guys found out? Hey, how's this working for you? Hey, what are you doing? And so that really has been part of this conversation is, yes, it's the standard, but also it's the standard because, and like I mentioned when I was talking, ACT has worked very hard to build this concept. So yes, schools are adding it in. There are several in our area that are adding it in. Next week I can get you specific names.
Yeah, that's my question.
Yes, yes.
I think what she was saying a while ago that was in that answer was that at this training will be other schools there they can talk to. So they'll get, I assume you guys will gather a lot more information in at that.
Yeah.
So I think that will be where they'll
Yeah, we'll
get.
get specific ones that we can ask questions.
I'm just the type of guy, if I'm gonna buy a Ford, I go talk to a Ford owner. That's just,
Yes.
do you like it?
We have not had the opportunity to go to one of those trainings yet, so we're looking forward to that. And not only hearing the success they've had, but also like what is their best practice for using the data? How have they found it to be effective for their teachers? And I think the thing we haven't hit a ton on, but I am super excited about is the interest, inventory, and career cluster aspect that we get for kids. So when I was still teaching 8th grade is when we gave the Explore test. And the kids kind of cared about their score that they got a little bit, whatever. What they really loved and what was so exciting as a teacher to see was their excitement when they would open that little brochure and it would tell them, here are all the jobs based off what you said you like, what's interesting to you. Here are all the things that you might be interested in doing. And you would hear them say things like, I never thought about that before. I've never thought that I might be a good electrician. I've never thought that I might be good carpentry. I never thought I would be a good teacher. And it is so amazing to see those light bulbs go on. The other thing that I loved about that was it was like an equalizer, right? So I think we would all say college is not the most important thing. In my opinion, college is not the most important thing. We want children to be successful when they leave us, whatever they do, have them to be successful. What this report that they get does is I feel like it equalizes that a lot, whether you're going to be whatever it is that it suggests, it gives some value to that career and gives kids kind of an idea of what they're going to need to do as they get in high school if they think this is what they want to do. So I think it gives them, I mean, I'm sure you guys have read the same studies I've read about teenage mental health post-COVID. They've lost hope, they've lost direction, they've lost focus, they don't feel like there's any hope for their future. So I am so excited for them to be able to have that opportunity to say, here are some things that I would be really good at, right? So I can now get with my high school teacher, the counselor, whoever, and get a path established for me that helps me to get to something that I can be great at. You know, it kind of gives them that
Right, whether
direction.
they choose it or not, it at least gives them that path.
Absolutely, it gives them direction. A lot of kids at that age think that they're not good at anything, right? They think, we've all had kids that age. They think there's nothing they can do well. There's nothing that, it's not all out of hope. I'm telling you, I mean, I still remember 15 years later, the excitement that they would have when they would open up that little pamphlet and look and see all the things that it said that they could do. I love that.
I know this has been a lengthy conversation, and I mean, we're going on 50 minutes here, but quite frankly, this is the most important thing we do. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we're going to approve some fundraisers and we're going to approve some contracts. At the end of the day, we've been entrusted by the people who have public schools and oversee the education process. This is the metric that we have. It's scores and tests. So first of all, I appreciate you guys and your hard work. Appreciate your patience on the line of this conversation. And I mean, I'm excited. I mean,
Because again, and just to kind of piggyback, I know we've probably beaten this thing to death, but I mean, I've seen it so many times. 18-year-olds get out there and try to decide what they're going to do for the rest of their life, and they just don't know. And this would at least, you know, that they have to stay on the pathway, but at least it gives them some. I like it. I don't know.
But might also something that they haven't thought about before.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
cluster, like, hey, all these things go.
Exactly. That would be, yeah.
fair.
I'm not sold.
Thank you guys. I would say more questions, but I don't want to. Anyway, great work. Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, let's go back to Title IX compliance.
Title IX, we completed our annual investigator training. That's something that we do for all of our administrators. We've completed that. Mr. Murray and I are working on cleaning up the Title IX section of our website, which that's a website, is a continual work in progress. What worked yesterday doesn't work today, so we're working on that. I also right now am working with Brandon Carey, and you guys know SSBA, on kind of understandably, we all understand why we have 9,000 Title IX documents. We have written a document and something for every possible scenario in Title IX. And it's gotten to the point, which we all understand, that it is a little expansive past the point of being useful, if that makes sense. When you want information on Title IX, you've got to go read 14 documents and find which one has the information that you need. So what we have been working on, and he and I have been talking about, is how do we take all of this stuff that we've made for Title IX and make it consolidate a little bit and simplify. And we realized that a lot of our documents are redundant. We have a lot of direct repetition in the things that we've made, which was a lot of hard work, and we put a lot of time into that. But we also want it to be useful. We want somebody, if they've got questions about Title IX, to be able to go on our website and easily find the document that answers their question and read it and understand. That's the whole point. So we're working on that and kind of cleaning that all up. The only other thing I wanted to mention about Title IX is, and I think we've talked about this, we have been expecting some pretty massive changes to Title IX in October. You know, every time a new presidential person is elected, that administration will change federal laws, including Title IX. But now Brandon is being told that that's not going to happen in October, that those changes will probably be pushed back to March. We'll see what happens in March. And that's good news for us. As from a process standpoint, I feel 100% confident in the process that we've established here for dealing with Title IX complaints. When these changes go through, if they were to go through as they say that they might, our 21-step, very black and white, very easy to understand process of the 21 steps we got to keep 4, and everything else would change, which is going to take a lot of reimagining, rethinking, retraining, when we get to that point, we'll do it. Whatever we have to do, we'll do it. But this just gives us a little bit more time to continue using the process that we know has been effective for us here, and that has been a model for districts all over the state. So that's it for timeline.
Great work. Item F, superintendent's report. Apparently wants to bring us all to work.
I want to follow up real quick on what they're talking about. So one thing that we've done since I've been here is our conversations aren't about what's good for right now, right? We're not looking at how can we make this year's test scores amazing. Our conversations, what we look at, what we talk about, the way we're looking is how do we make the next 50 years? How do we build a process and put things in place that will be effective over the next 50 years? So again, we're not trying to focus on how we make this one thing better, it's how we make our system better. And so I love working with these ladies about and just listening to them talk because they're way smarter than I am, and just hearing them work through kind of their processes it's impressive. Everything that they're doing, everything we're doing, we're being intentional about what's being taught, very intentional about what is being taught, and then how it's being assessed, and then how we use those assessments to then drive better instruction so we get better assessments, and then we drive and we turn around and go back and do it again. So just keeping that, there's a lot of work that goes on that people don't know or see, and that's why kind of part of what I want to do over this next year is to have these ladies here a lot so you guys can understand what we're doing, what they're doing, so we can focus back to what are we doing in the classroom. Weed out some of the noise, get rid of some other stuff, but stay focused on that. Speaking of staying focused, talking about curriculum, there was some stuff that came out from the State Department this week. We got several phone calls, nothing terrible. I just want to make the statement to you guys publicly and just kind of to our people in that any curriculum changes that happen in our district, they're well thought out. We have a group of people that look through our curriculum. All of our curriculum that we teach, we made available at our curriculum nights, and we always welcome any parents to come in, and if they're wondering what their kids are learning in 3rd grade science or 5th grade history, they can come in and look through the books and make sure that they are comfortable with what's being taught in our classrooms. Same thing with our libraries. We've had many discussions about our library books, and we have a list of 500 pages long of all of our library books, and all of our librarians do a good job of continuing to go through and clean that up and to make everything as great as it can be for each of our students. So for our curriculum, like I said, we have a good committee that takes care of that. We don't make changes on a whim, as you guys can see with this tonight. Enrollment. So I had Donna run our enrollment. As of Friday, we are setting it at 1,759, which is up by about 30 students more than last year, where we were last year on average. That number, we kind of started out the year up, and it has stayed up there. So we've, of course, gained a few, lost a few, but enrollment has increased this year, which is good, right? It's a testament to people aren't running from us, which is good. So Therapy Dog, I'm just going to kind of throw this out this month. Next month we will have some people here, Ms. Mater, and I'm not sure who else will be here, to kind of give a presentation. Mrs. Mater has wanted a Therapy Dog, I believe in our system from what I hear for several years. Forever, I think. When I was at Pryor, our special ed director there actually kind of started the Therapy Dog program process, whatever we're going to call it. We did a lot of work because there are a lot of questions about liability and training and what happens when the dog has to pee and what happens when the kid grabs its tail and pulls on it and all of that stuff. And so we went through all of that work. I've gone through all that work before. We had a meeting with a bunch of us and met some of the therapy dogs from Pryor. They came over. We do have a very expensive dog that has been offered to be donated to the school if this is a direction we go. And I think so we would end up having to pay a couple $100 for training. But all of that stuff will be presented next month. I just wanted to kind of bring it to your attention so you can have some thoughts on it, or if you have any thoughts on it or any questions, you can holler at me over the next month and we'll get a lot more information. So our cafeteria, we are met last week with Miss Jennings, working on getting all of our free reduced forms in. There's a lot of things in the cafeteria in the child nutrition program that we're having to get cleaned up. Some processes we're doing differently. Mrs. Atkins and I have spent a lot of time working on how do we make sure that all of our kids, regardless of socioeconomic status, are getting a good meal, at least breakfast and lunch every day. And so there's a lot more that goes into that than what you think, but I do think our new food service management company has been doing a great job as far as they're producing their meals. We're not at the end of the 21 days yet, are we? I think we're getting close.
Explain that. I don't know if I understand what the 21 days is about.
So according to state law, our food service management company has to follow the same a set of recipes that were our recipes, menus, not recipes.
Yeah, but we submitted that.
That we submitted, right. So basically the same menus that we had last year, they by law have to follow the same menus for the first 21 days of service. After that, then they can switch and do whatever they want. Now, they have been preparing the food differently because it is the menu and not the recipe. And the group that we have, they do a lot more home cooking prep type stuff as opposed to kind of some of the neat things we've done. So but it is that 21 days that they have to follow that menu. So once those days are done, then I think we'll see a change, more of a drastic change kind of in our cafeterias as far as what's being done. They've been doing some work at the high school, is that right, on the breakfast, trying to get a lot more kids involved. So we're kind of doing some kind of meals on the go for the breakfast over at the high school because the kids are just not walking from the high school over to the cafeteria anymore. Our involvement's been good. We're still trying to get those free reduced applications in to make sure that the kids that need that are getting that. That's about it.
So do we have a manager yet?
I'm sorry?
Do we have a cafeteria manager? Remember the original question?
Yes. So Amy, what's her last name? Coral. I was going to call her Coral. Amy Coral is here. She's been here. She's done a great job. We've worked with her on several different problems that we've had, and she's jumped right on it. She's getting after it, working hard, and doing a good job.
She's here full time.
She is here full time, yes, sir. Yes. That's all I have on these things. Any questions on anything? Let me see
All right, section 3, consent agenda. These items may be approved by one board motion unless any board member desires to have separate votes on any or all of these items. Included in the consent agenda, item A, discussion and consideration for approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting on August 14th, 2023. And B, discussion and consideration for approval of the following warrants and encumbrances. General fund encumbrances 177 through 215, general fund 179 through 224. Bond building encumbrances 42 through 50. Bond building warrants 35 through 98. Building bond fund encumbrances 38 through 193, and building bond fund warrants 1. Item C, discussion and consideration for approval of financial reports, including general fund, building bond funds, and activity funds. Item D, discussion and consideration for the approval of the following activity fund transfer 814. Item E, discussion and consideration for approval of the following fundraiser request, FCCLA, Ozark Delight Candy Company. Item F, discussion and consideration for approval of the following out-of-state overnight field trip request, middle school and high school TSA to TSA State Conference from April 17th, April 19th of 2024. So the item board member would like to vote on separately. Did anything you wanted?
I don't have any. I think on our general fund encumbrances, the remind is about 16,000. Obviously, it's a large encumbrance, but we talked about that previously. We felt on the payment register.
Speaking of the remind, is it up and going?
Remind? I don't know.
Mr. Fisher, I asked him just this morning, and he's finishing the final sync. I don't know what all that means, but the final step, he's finishing this week, and then we'll be up and ready for teachers to use after that.
why was we late getting that when school started, and that's the way teachers and coaches and everything else is communicating? Is that how we, I mean, we had a free, if I recall, I'm new, we had a free surgeon every night, correct? Is everything that teachers down on the old one going to transfer to the new one?
Yes, as long as their original account was registered with their school email address, which I bet all of them are, almost all of them are. That's part of what Rick's working on, getting the classrooms they've already made and moved over into this, it's called their Mind Hub, so that they don't lose their classes, they don't lose their messages, everything they've sent is still there.
We actually were last year, we were going down a different path, not using Reminds. We spent a lot of time working on that, and we realized that 90% of our teachers are already using Remind, and so it was kind of a late, last-minute change, but it made more sense, and it's actually will be implemented quicker probably than what the rooms would have been.
So we're giving 16,000 something for that, if I recall. We're 2 months, our date was August. Will that change next year because we're only using 10 months out of the year?
Yeah, because we've had access to it for,
Well, I mean the cost. See, our contract's only 10 months.
right.
So is that a prorated contract or?
They are prorated contracts, so it does not cost the fiscal year. So we'll go through June 30th and they'll start a new one on
All
21.
will be on time next year,
Yes.
and it could possibly go up because it's prorated.
It could, yes.
Okay.
But I think it will actually be less than that, because I think part of that is kind of the initial setup.
Oh, yes, all right.
So,
Well, I was just curious because I have had some comments on it when I lost some of the old data.
That's what we're trying to.
And it wasn't working, and we're well into the school.
There was an email on that correct? About when she was so that.
Yeah, it's right here.
Because in the regulations on selling kids.
yes, so it was attached, I think, to the back.
They're going to be outside.
That's right.
It'll be outside.
Yeah, outside school.
Just want to point that out. All right. I will entertain a motion on consent agenda.
Move to approve consent agenda A through F.
Second. For discussion? Hearing none, vote please.
Yes.
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 Consent agenda has been approved. All right, section 4 is administrative. Item A, recommendation, consideration, action on approving the estimate of needs for fiscal year 2023 to 2024.
Brady, you want to talk to that and leave any comments?
There's not much of an increase except for what they're anticipating from the state based on the teacher raises. So it's gone up about $1 million. Last year we were at 14.6 was our estimate of needs, which we did over collect, but this last year we did not have to do a supplemental appropriation. So I'm kind of hoping to stay on that trajectory for this year.
Entertain a motion on item A.
Move that we approve the estimate of needs for fiscal year 23-24.
Second.
Discussion? Vote please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Item B, recommendation, consideration, action on approving a contract with Melissa Homes for SLP service in 2023-2024 school year.
Sherry, do you have any comments on that?
She's been working with us a couple of days. She's finishing up her SLP degree now, so she's given us a couple of days. We're using her to supplement since we have over 150 students in speech services. So,
Yeah, it's really difficult to find speech that equal. And so I think bringing her in part-time to...
How many do we have?
On staff.
speech pathologists, we have two.
Two.
One in the lower and one in the upper.
So this is an additional third one? Okay.
Well, it's contract. So
Right, but I'm saying it would be, right.
And she's actually an assistant, so she can't do everything that they can.
But she's working, she's about to wrap that up, right?
Yes, right.
She can provide services.
That's great. All right. Motion on item B.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract with Winston Homes for the SLP service for the 23-24 school year.
Second motion.
Is there discussion? Vote, please.
Yes.
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 Item B is approved. Item C, recommendation, consideration, and action on approving Oologah High School students taking courses at Orthweese Technology Center for high school credit, general math to replace third math credit, and anatomy and physiology for the 2023-2024 school year.
So, yeah, these are classes that students can take at Tech to get high school credit for it. This has to be approved.
Entertain motion on item C.
Move that we approve the Oologah High School students taking courses at Northeast Tech Center for high school credit, general math to replace third math credit, and anatomy physiology for the 23-24 school year.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, vote please.
Yes.
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 Item C is approved. Item D, recommendation, consideration, and action on approving, declaring the following items as surplus to be disposed of according to OTPS policy 1997 Ford F-350, 2005 U.S. bus 13+3 capacity, the 1991 IH Bluebird bus 47 capacity.
So I believe what our plan, so according to our policy, is that any surplus item has to be sold by the director of operations, which would be Brady. But I think our plan is to try to get an idea from some car dealers or something on the truck to try to just sell that outright, because I think we can probably get more money. And on the other two, we'll do sealed bids. Again, vehicle that we just don't use, taking up space.
And insurance.
Yep, I would entertain action on item D.
Move that we approve declaring the following items surplus to be disposed of according to OTPS policy 1997 Ford F-350, 2005 U.S. bus 17+3 capacity, 1991 IH Bluebird bus 47 capacity.
Discussion?
There's a question here we got on the policy, the way it states, take it. According to the policy, then we must do what on the truck?
So as long as it's sold at fair market value or something similar to fair market value, it doesn't matter. According to our policy, it just has to be disposed of by the director of operations.
Right. And that's what I just want to make.
Yeah, it doesn't, we don't, by our policy, we don't have to do sealed bids or whatever, but it just has to be at fair market value.
But the other buses can't.
We're gonna, seal bid those because whatever fair market value is.
For a 1991 bus.
91 best.
Good questions. Differentiate.
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion? Vote please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Item D is approved. Item E, recommendation, consideration, and action on approving the Oologah-Talala Public Schools Gifted and Talented Plan for the 2023-2024 school year.
Do we have any changes?
No, it's really mostly the same. We're putting on the spring to talk about the plan, see if it needs to be changed or revised. There was some old language, like it still referred to the old state testing instead of OSCP. So that changed. We updated to add our new offerings at the middle school, the NJHS, which you all approved last month. And then also Ms. Duncan is going to start offering mathematics competition through OSSM. But those are really the only changes. We have a good process in place for testing and identifying, so none of that needed to change.
Entertain action on item E.
Move to approve Oologah-Talala Public Schools Gifted and Talent Plan for 23-24 school year.
Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, vote please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Item E is approved. Item F, recommendation, consideration, and action on approving an updated contract with Junior Achievement Baseline for 2023-2024 school year.
Hillary, can I tell you what happened there? Because we approved this contract last month.
Sure, and then I heard back from the Cherokee Nation, and they have made some changes
asking the district to pay $6 per fifth grader versus normally in the past we haven't had to pay anything for it. So that's a change that we were not budgeting for. Because in the past they've covered the full cost. It's $30 a kid. They are paying $24, asking us to pay $6.
Are you paying the 24 Cherokee Nations?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So they just asked us to.
Yes.
And did they give a reason?
They did not give a reason.
There's several things that I deal with on things that Cherokee Nations has pulled out a lot of things, or partially. I mean, a lot of like what happened here, half or. I can think of 3 in the last 6 months. Anymore. I don't know. I was curious if anybody knew because I've not been able to get an answer.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. Have we, now we,
I did talk to Mr. Dawes. We are going to pull that $6 per child from our Title VI Indian Ed money as a remainder.
So it's coming from me.
So, I know we're not in discussion yet, but this is a great program.
Absolutely.
Like, I offered to David, like, if you guys have never gone and seen it, like, I went and volunteered as a parent. I'm like, this is really stinking cool.
Absolutely.
So in Sand Springs, like, our church, like, we sponsor a couple of classes to go do this because the school pays for some, but then they looked at the community partnership to help do that. So it's a great program.
And I think it kind of goes back to the discussion that we were having about the ACT prep. It gives these fifth graders a chance to see, you know, hey, I might be interested in a job at the bank or something like that.
They all work at Arby's, though.
I know.
It's Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, the restaurants are very popular.
Or they might be the DJ. That's the other thing.
Yes.
My neighbor is to be the DJ.
I basically ran the gas company last time I was there. So. All right, I entertain action on item F.
Make a motion that we approve the updated contract with the junior achievement for this town for the 23-24 school year.
Second motion.
Discussion? Vote, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Item F is approved. Item G, recommendation, consideration, and action on approving the changes to the district contract addendum relating to athletic worker and security pay. Athletic event worker pay increased to $13 per hour and security pay increased to $25 an hour.
I think the current pay for the event worker is $12.25, if I remember correctly. $12.22. And then security is $20 an hour. Just difficult to find people. So just kind of making that adjustment.
Where do you get security from?
So normally it's our Rogers County deputies or local PD.
I'm surprised you can get them for $35 for the.
Yeah.
That's cheap. Yeah, there's none here. It is.
Yeah.
Okay. I would entertain action on item G.
Move that we approve the changes to the district contract addendum relating to athletic worker and security pay as stated.
Second.
Discussion? Vote, please.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm really excited about it.
I got it.
Okay, item H, recommendation, consideration, action on approving residency committees for each resident teacher for the 2023-2024 school year.
You have that paper in front of you, right? It was kind of a link pulled together. It's the same one, kind of sideways. So by regulation or law, I'm not sure which one, we have to have a committee for each new teacher. It's comprised of a mentor teacher, administrator, and then we add in Ms. Noble. She meets with them regularly, kind of works with them on some standard practice, on best practices and just some things like that. Something I have to have. It's good to help those new teachers.
I know it always just be they dumb things down for us, right? They did a session on artificial intelligence, AI, and there are softwares out there that will help new teachers write their lesson plans. But I'm sure you already know. I'm sure that they've done that for us.
Say one thing one time.
I took notes, it was really interesting. So, you need connection, I have this slide, I can do it. Great.
Keep that.
I would entertain action on item H.
Move to approve residency committee for each resident teacher for the 23-24 school year.
Second.
Vote please, is there discussion? Vote please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Which is approved on my recommendation, consideration action on approving the school district to use 1,080 hours for calculation of the school term for 2023-2024 school year.
So we have this in policy to do this. It has to be approved by the district every year, and I'm not really sure why, but we have to approve it we have to have it approved at the board level every year, and we will, for accreditation purposes. So we meet the 1,080 hour requirement. They've also added, we have 165 school days within that 1,080 hours, and I think it's 165, and we meet that requirement also.
Will entertain a motion on item I?
Move that we approve the school district to use 1,080 hours for calculation of the school term for the 2023-2024 school year.
Is there discussion? So our virtual days, they count towards that, like we get full credit for the full day, and so on and so forth. But do all the buildings greatly benefit from that? I mean, I know high school greatly enjoys it. I don't know if you guys are getting phone calls from parents that are mad, so take care of childcare or whatever. I mean, we're not in the childcare business, we're in the education business. But
I don't think we've got any complaints. I think parents are used to it at this point. And the benefit on our teacher side is it's almost immeasurable.
yeah. Any other discussion?
Is there a limit on how many virtual days we can have?
No. Good question.
That is a good question. I think the answer is not that I know of. I do think though if it became excessive that we would have to prove why we're taking so many, especially with our current leadership at state.
Are we 1 month? Is that where you're at?
I think we're 6 through the whole.
There's some months we don't have them all.
Yeah, okay. So I think there's 6 throughout the year.
I hear that we could think about it.
I can see where that teaches a lot. I get that.
It gives them time to meet in their PLCs without having to take up their plan time.
Yeah, I can
So
see
it's
that.
really valuable.
The markers out of the kids, I'm not sure, but I sure see what the teacher can get. I didn't get it. It's been bad deal for me. Very bad.
Vote please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Item I is approved. Section 5, personnel, proposed executive session to discuss resignations, hiring of personnel, and/or extra duty assignments pursuant to 25 OS Section 307B 1, 2, and 7 of the open meeting law. Items to be discussed are resignations of Layla Diffenbaugh, BTS duties only, hiring of Phyllis Albertson and Ken Diego and Bill White, negotiations between the OCTA and the Oologah-Talala Board of Education. See you.
Move we enter into executive session.
Vote please.
Yes.
Yes. We're at the show. We are in executive session. If anybody's leaving, thank you for being here. Item B is acknowledge the board has returned to open session. Item C is statement of the board president in executive session minutes compliance. While we were in executive session, Lyle Blakely, Robert Talcott, Vice Principal Joe Costa was joined by Superintendent Dr. David Wilkins and Kendra Atkins opened the door for 3.2 seconds. There were no votes taken, no decision made. All right, item D, vote to accept or not accept submitted resignation for the Deaf and Ball Building Test Coordinator duties effective August 31st, 2023.
Move that we accept the submitted resignation of the Deaf Building Test Coordinator duties effective August 31st, 2023.
Second motion.
Vote please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Item D is approved. Item E, motion and vote to employ or not employ the recommended applicants as listed below. Phil Salverson, paraprofessional for the remainder of the 2023-2024 school year. Kim, who did you say? Kim Sego, teacher assistant for the remainder of the 2023-2024 school year. And Gabby White, teacher assistant for the remainder of the 2023-2024 school year.
Move to employ Phyllis Albertson, Kim Siegel, and Gary White.
Second. Vote please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Item is approved. Item F, motion and vote to approve the negotiated agreement between Oologah-Talala Classroom Teachers Association of Oologah-Talala Board of Education for the 2023-2024 school year.
I move that we approve the negotiated agreement between the Oologah-Talala Classroom Teachers Association and the Oologah-Talala Board of Education for the 2023-2024 school year.
Second. Vote please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Item F is approved. Item G, motion and vote to approve contracts for the following administration, certified personnel, and support personnel.
Move that we approve contracts for administration, certified personnel, and support personnel. As presented.
Second.
Vote please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Item G is approved. Section 6, new business.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
We do have new business.
Yes.
Do I have them?
That's what they gave them to me.
Oh, you still have them.
And you just gave me a copy.
We have a letter of resignation from, who is it?
Phyllis Albertson.
The one we just hired? She's already quit.
I didn't realize that she was on this agenda. So, yes.
It's a position, basically a position change.
No, she's resigned.
No, she is resigning.
We did pay her, so we got her.
Oh, okay. Did you do a letter of recommendation, or a letter of resignation?
We do have a letter of resignation.
Phyllis Albertson.
Phyllis Albertson, yes.
Do we have an effective date?
The 13th.
I think that's right here.
Yeah, that's right.
Is it in there?
Phyllis Albertson.
No,
That's her problem. Yeah, letter of
No, the letter just came in this morning. He's the one who gave it to me.
handwritten, was it email?
Right, I brought a hard copy of her.
Yeah, it's somewhere. I thought I gave it to Bree.
So it'll be effective the 13th of this month, so Wednesday?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Or we can hold off on it for next month.
I should present it and do it.
I have the copy in my office.
Should it be an agenda item?
We can do it under new business.
Yeah, it was a change.
Can we get it?
Yeah. Came in within this time and agenda posted.
Here we go.
I would move that we accept the resignation of Phyllis Albertson effective September 13th, 2023.
Vote please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Item is approved. We would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So made.
Vote please.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.